Welcome to the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll, and this is the healthiest half hour anywhere online today. Appreciate you joining us right here on Facebook and on YouTube. Coming up, we are about to get a master's in health from a master of health. School is in session, and leading the class is Dr. Neal Barnard. We are going to be opening up the doctor's mailbag. It is filled with all kinds of questions. You ready for a little bit of everything, Dr. Barnard?
Looking forward to it, Chuck.
All right, now here's what you need to do to get your question answered. Go ahead and drop that in the comment section or the chat box. We will get to as many as we possibly can before the end of the show. Lots of good ones in there already, but there is always room for more. You can also tweet them to us using the hashtag Exam Room Live. But before we can prescribe any answers, let's go ahead and get caught up on the latest happenings. Here are your health headlines for Friday, November 6th, 2020. There is another unwanted record for coronavirus cases, a staggering 122,000 reported on Thursday. That's 20,000 more than the previous high set just one day earlier. The same headline playing out for hospitalizations, with 53,000 now hospitalized for COVID-19, more than 10,000 of whom are in intensive care. Also yesterday, the death toll climbing by 1,200, and 235,000 Americans have now died from COVID-19. In other news, as the childhood obesity epidemic continues, perhaps the best way to get a healthier message to young minds is to meet them where they are. And that, my friend, would be with video games. Researchers in Canada studied children between the ages of 8 and 10, finding those who played a game designed specifically to teach them about fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and other foods, they had significantly higher nutrition knowledge than their peers. Researchers say all participants in the study did not know a lot about nutrition at all prior to beginning the process, and there is clear evidence now, they say, that the game can serve as a captivating and efficient teaching tool. The findings come as nearly 1 in every 5 children in the U.S. is obese. And finally, today, taking a look at trends, a promising one for plant-based advocates. Google searches for the term vegan food near me spiked by 2,000% over the last 5 years, according to data trackers at Thoughtful. Also spiking, searches for vegan food delivery. Those are up big time since the beginning of the pandemic. This morning, we were saddened to learn that America's favorite weatherman, Al Roker, has been diagnosed with prostate cancer. The 66-year-old revealing the diagnosis on the Today Show. So as we wish him well and a swift recovery, I wanted to bring Dr. Barnard on to talk about prostate cancer, how common it is, who's most at risk, and what we know about its causes. So, Dr. Barnard, I appreciate you being here today.
You bet. It's a pleasure to be here.
This one really caught a lot of people off guard. How common is prostate cancer among men? I understand this is perhaps one of the more common forms of cancer.
Yes, it's extremely common. In fact, when I was in medical school, our professors would often say that every man will get prostate cancer if he just lives long enough. Now, that's an exaggeration. It's not true. Some people get it, some don't. But what they're talking about is that when men die, and if you do an autopsy at almost any age after middle age, you will find abnormal cells in their prostates that look like cancer cells. But the issue is it going to spread? Because if it doesn't, if the cancer cells just stay in the prostate and they don't really grow and they don't spread and they don't cause symptoms, then it's just a theoretical issue. There's no reason to bother with it. And many prostate cancers are in that category. They're very slow growing. And so the doctors, when they look at prostate cancer, they ask themselves, if it's so slow growing, will it ever present a risk for you, or will your cause of death be a heart attack when you're in your late 80s or something like that, and we don't need to worry about this prostate cancer? There are prostate cancer cases that occur fairly early in life, and sometimes they are quite aggressive. And there you've really got no choice. You've got to begin treatment.
And how much of this is diet and lifestyle driven? We've learned so often on this show that a lot of these conditions are preventable. Does prostate cancer fall into this category, or is this just bad lucks and genetic?
There is there are genetic issues, and there's perhaps a fair amount of bad luck, one might imagine. But diet does play a very important role, and the factors that are involved are some that are pretty familiar. Back many years ago at Harvard, the Physicians' Health Study, it involved 21,000 men. And the food that stood out being related to prostate cancer was at first a bit of a surprise. It was dairy products. Men consuming the most dairy had 34% higher risk of prostate cancer compared to other men. But it became perhaps progressively less surprising for two reasons. One is that other studies showed the same thing. The health professionals follow-up study, much bigger, but very much the same result. Dairy products strongly linked to prostate cancer risk. The other thing is we started to understand why. When a calf drinks milk, or for that matter, when a human baby drinks breast milk, something happens in the blood. The milk causes the formation of something called insulin-like growth factor that helps the calf to grow, helps the human baby to grow. All nursing mammals get this IGF-1 in their blood when they're drinking milk. It's not so much that it's in the milk, although there are traces of it in milk, but in response to the sugars and the proteins that are naturally part of the milk, the infant's body makes IGF-1, and that stimulates growth. Okay, you're a 66-year-old man, or a 50-year-old man, or an 80-year-old man. If you drink a glass of milk now, IGF-1 forms in your blood. And IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, mixed with prostate cancer cells in the test tube, they grow like crazy. It's like fertilizer on weeds. So we learned a long time ago, you can take a blood sample from a man, measure the IGF-1 level, then have him drink 3 glasses of milk every day for a few weeks, then measure his IGF-1 again. It's gone way up. You can take that very same IGF-1, mix it with prostate cancer cells, they grow. So get the dairy out of your diet. You are not a growing toddler, a growing baby. And so dairy is a problem. The other side, tomato products are protective because we presume because of the lycopene, Lycopene, lycopene. That's the red pigment. It's an antioxidant. Tomato products reduce the risk of prostate cancer, even if it's tomato sauce, pizza sauce, tomato ketchup. That red pigment is what does it. And it can reduce the risk maybe by 35%, something like that, if you have a fair amount of tomato products in your diet. Soy products reduce prostate cancer risk about 30%. Weight loss is good. Overweight increases the risk. Weight loss can help. So those are all some of the issues in preventing the cancer from taking hold.
And Al Roker famously did lose a lot of weight over the years, put some of it back on, but nearly not to the extent as he was at his heaviest. One of the things that he also spoke about when he revealed the diagnosis this morning was just how much more prevalent the disease is among African American men compared to other races. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, that's right. The disease is diagnosed very commonly, and mortality is extremely high in African American men. And the question is, to what extent is that genetic versus to what extent does it just relate to factors that can be controlled? And I think that's a reasonable question to ask, regardless of race, regardless of age. In addition to whatever medical treatment a person is having, if they have been diagnosed with prostate cancer, that this is a time to really make sure that you're not neglecting what diet can do. And here's an area where I want to tip my hat to Dean Ornish's work. As you know, Dr. Dean Ornish really revolutionized the treatment of heart disease by showing that a plant-based diet, along with quitting smoking and managing stress and fairly modest exercise, could really do wonders for the heart. It could open up the arteries again. He then did a trial in men who had prostate cancer. Now, these were men who had prostate cancer that was growing rather slowly, so they were being tracked to see did they need to have surgery or not. And the way you track it is with PSA, prostate-specific antigen. If your PSA level is rising only very slowly, you don't necessarily need treatment. If it's rising rapidly, you do. It means that the cancer is progressing. So Dr. Ornish brought in 84 men. Half of them were in a control group, no treatment, or no treatment other than what their doctors would normally do, which was waiting and seeing, basically. The experimental group went vegan, no dairy, which if you're ahead of me, you're thinking, all right, that's going to bring their IGF-1 level down. You're right. No animal products at all, kept the oils low, and really a healthy plant-based diet. And the results were really quite striking. In the very first year, the control group they had the experience that men with prostate cancer have, which is their PSAs were going up on average about 6%. And there were a couple of them where it was going faster than that, and they had to drop out of the study and get treatment, meaning surgery or other treatment. The vegan group, their PSAs did not go up. In fact, on average, they went down about 4%. And so this doesn't mean that you cancel your doctor's appointment. It doesn't mean that it's a cure-all for everybody, but it does mean that if you can control your body chemistry, if you control IGF-1 and other factors that are integral to prostate cancer growth and ultimately mortality, let's use that power. And that power is a healthy plant-based diet.
All right. And I think everyone here at the Physicians Committee wishes Al Roker all the best on his road to recovery. But Dr. Barnard, let's go ahead and move on now, because we have so many people now waiting to ask questions. The doctor's mailbag today is absolutely overflowing. So why don't we go ahead and ask the first one? By the way, if you would like to submit a question, go ahead, put that in the comments or the chat box, or tweet that to us right now using the hashtag ExamRoomLive. First question comes to us from Dinah. She wants to know, you were just speaking about a low-fat diet. She wants to know how much fatty food is okay on a whole food plant-based diet, how much avocado, tofu, olives, nuts, and seeds should be allowed every day.
Great question. It really depends on your goals. If you're a skinny, healthy person, you can probably be more liberal with the oils. But if you want to lose weight, or if you're hoping to reverse your diabetes, or really deal with any other health issue, you not only want to get away from the animal products, but I would minimize the oils too. When you do that added step, you'll discover weight loss is a lot better. And you see better results with other things as well. And by the way, when I'm saying minimizing oils, even extra virgin olive oil, even organic avocados, all of those things will pack some oil in it that will have enough calories to slow down your weight loss, unfortunately.
All right, here's a question now from Tracy. This is one that we get quite a bit. A lot of people wonder about this one. Is conventional spinach okay to eat if you cannot afford organic, or is that the produce that you should really splurge on and not go ahead and eat it if it is not organic?
Organic is always better than non-organic. If you have a choice, if you have something that's not chemically treated as opposed to something that is, it's a good idea. Organic is somewhat more expensive. Depends on the season, depends on the product. But overall, on a vegan diet, you're going to save money because you're not buying cheese and steak and so forth. So you can use some of that extra money to go organic if you wish to. But with regard to which foods when does it really matter about going organic? I like to look at the Environmental Working Group's website. They track which foods have the most pesticide application on them. And to make it sort of simple, think about which foods are most vulnerable. If a food is grown underground, a root vegetable, the bugs are not so likely to attack it as if it's a leaf. Also, let's say it's a food where you're going to discard the peel. It's not so important that a chemical might have been applied on the surface because you're removing that peel, like when you eat an orange or something like that. So where is spinach? Well, spinach is a pretty delicate plant, and it's above ground, so insects can get at it, and you're not going to peel spinach. So it's one where, if it's me, I tend to look, when it's the green leafy vegetables, that's where you could just imagine all the chemicals that they put on them to try to drive away the bugs, and that's one where, in my view, going organic really does help.
All right, here's a great question from Salasia. She's wondering, what is a great but succinct resource to explain this way of eating to people who aren't ready to read a whole book? So they want to go vegan, but they don't want to spend a whole lot of time reading.
Okay, at the risk of self-promotion, I'm looking around for my copy. I wrote a book for exactly that. It's called the Vegan Starter Kit. I've written about 20 books, I have to confess. And every one of them is big enough to hold, you can use it to prop open a door. And I feel your pain. People are thinking, gee, I don't want to give this to somebody. They aren't going to read it, whatever. So I wrote this skinny little book. And my deal with my publisher was I want a book that a person can read in about a half hour, 45 minutes, and get the confidence they need to go vegan. What should I do? What should I not do? Give me some starter recipes. It's called the Vegan Starter Kit. Do try that out. Or if you are super impatient, you will find at pcrm.org lots and lots of listenables and viewables, videos, and obviously podcasts like the Exam Room that you can listen to as you're driving or doing something else. So hopefully all of those will be useful.
We've talked a lot about fat already on the show today, but this is a great follow-up question here. Somebody wondering, is it necessary to include some fat sources in the diet to be able to better absorb vitamins A, D, E, and K?
What a good group we have here. We have the A team here. Yes, those vitamins are fat-soluble vitamins, unlike, say, vitamin B12, which your body doesn't need fat to absorb. A, E, D, and K, you do. But the amount you need is trivial. So you don't have to soak some bacon grease into your breakfast in order to be able to absorb fats. The tiny traces of fats naturally in foods will allow you to do that. So let's say you have some broccoli with your lunch, and you think there's no fat in there, is there? Well, there is. Send it to a lab, and they'll tell you it's about 7 or 8% fat. Brown rice is about 5% fat as a percentage of calories. So that's really what you need. You don't need to add fat.
All right, here's a great question from the Vegan Czar. So many people ask about omega-3. This is a hot topic. The Vegan Czar on Instagram wants to know, should I take algae-based omega-3s or stick with seeds and nuts only for that?
Nobody knows the answer to that. I really don't think. The seeds and nuts give you a little bit for extra credit here. The seeds and nuts give you an 18 carbon chain omega-3 called alpha linolenic acid. Your body takes that 18 carbon chain. It's like a necklace with 18 carbon molecules. It lengthens it from 18 to 20, 20 to 22, and that 22 one is called DHA, and that's the one that people prize. Your body can do that lengthening, and so plant foods are abundant in that 18 carbon one. Great, kind of end of story. Some people rightly say that lengthening process can be slow, and you're better off getting the DHA directly. Fish is one source, but not a good source, both for ethical reasons and frankly for pollution reasons. And you can actually buy DHA supplements that are derived from algae. It's vegan DHA. It's just like fish oil, but except it's algae derived, and it's good and clean and does everything that fish oil does without the fish. And that's preformed. Should you take it? Who knows? The science says that the DHA, no matter what the source, probably doesn't give you any big heart benefit. Not clear if it'll reduce the risk of Alzheimer's or not. Probably will increase the risk of prostate cancer. So stay tuned. We're learning as we go.
Sticking with Instagram questions, here's a good one from Jamie. She wants to know, do you have any tips for a newly pregnant woman who is trying to follow a plant-based diet?
What a wonderful gift to your baby. It's a great thing to go vegan. And in fact, it's even great prior to conception because, as you know, folic acid supplements are used to keep the baby's neural development healthy. And the natural source is folate, as in foliage, as in vegetables. Vegetable-rich diets are terrific. The rules are really simple. 4 food groups should be part of your diet. Those are fruits, vegetables, grains, and legumes, or beans, peas, lentils, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes. Do take your prenatal vitamins. Do not just assume that everything should come to you in nature, because while I'd like to pretend we live in nature, you actually live in New Jersey, or you live in Texas, or you live in California, or you live somewhere which is not necessarily exactly as natural as you want it to be, do take your prenatal vitamins and continue to take them when you are breastfeeding. Breastfeeding, by the way, to betray my prejudice, breastfeeding is the way to go. It's sometimes awkward and you need some help. Get that help, get that counseling and advice. It's great for your baby, and it's ultimately great for you too. Your baby does need the vitamin B12. That's part of your prenatals, and it'll be part of what you're taking afterward.
Denise has a question about
one other thing. If you're doing a little bit of red wine to relax, stop it completely. No alcohol, period, during pregnancy.
Good tip. Denise has a question. She's got a sweet tooth, as a matter of fact. What sweeteners are best to use? What do you think about maple syrup or date syrup?
Both fine. Really, with regard, they're reasonably natural. I would go easy on both, but there's nothing you could say that really indicts either one.
Okay, question from Jason. This is one that we really don't get too frequently. Jason wants to know, I have a very low appetite. He's not very hungry. Do you have any suggestions?
If your weight is okay and you're satisfied, that's perfectly fine. And if you're wondering, if the issue is that your friends are saying you're too skinny, you need to eat more, this is a good time to go online and just calculate your body mass index. It's a good way to settle the question: am I too skinny or overweight? You can Google BMI calculator, body mass index calculator. You put in your height, you put in your weight. It'll tell you the result. And if the result is between 18.5 and 25, you're in the healthy weight range, meaning you're in a weight range that is not associated with a higher risk of certain cancers, of diabetes, of hypertension, of heart disease, that kind of thing. Your natural hunger drive will keep you okay. Now, needless to say, the more physically active you are, that will stimulate greater appetite. If you run a mile, you're going to burn roughly 100 calories. If you run 2 or 3 or 4 miles, your next meal time, your brain is going to say, let's make up for what we just burned, and your appetite will increase.
Let's knock out a couple of questions about diabetes. We have one from Jen, wants to know, what is the ideal fasting blood sugar? I've heard 85, but mine is usually around 90.
Both of those are fine. You want to keep it below 100.
All right. Etheria wants to know, I'm curious if any studies have been done testing the effect of a diet high in plant fats versus a diet high in animal fats. What effect or what difference there is on diabetes?
Okay, we've talked about this a number of times, and it's the single most important thing really with regard to diabetes. And thank you for asking this. The buildup of fat inside your cells is what causes cells to become insulin resistant. And if the cells are filled with fat, then the insulin hormone can't open that cell up anymore. It can't open the cell to let the glucose inside. So there is some suggestion that animal fats are worse than plant fats. They're obviously worse with regard to cholesterol and some other things, cancer risk and so forth. But with regard to diabetes, there's also some evidence of that as well. However, if you have diabetes and you're trying to reverse it or get it under the best control you can, don't just avoid all animal products. Do that. Get the animal fat out of your diet completely. But keep the oils low too. And let me just ask you to think about it this way. There's no faucet on an olive tree. Olive oil, the only way you get olive oil is by taking 10,000 olives and throwing away all the fiber and all the pulp and so forth to get that concentrated oil. Nature never had that in mind. It's not a natural product. So if you're eating an olive, okay, but the added oils are not a natural thing, and they're giving you more fat than you would normally have. So I would suggest minimizing them as well.
Final question on the diabetes front from G Family. This is a really good one. Writes, I have a friend with type 2 diabetes who says he can't drink smoothies because blending fruits increases the glycemic index and he would absorb it too fast. Is there any substance to that claim?
Yeah, there could be. The glycemic index is a test that was developed by David Jenkins, a wonderful researcher in Toronto. And it just measures how fast sugars from the foods you eat are absorbed into the blood. Now, normally it's a good thing for sugars to come from your foods and to get into the blood, because sugar goes then from the blood to your brain. It powers your brain. You don't have sugar in your brain, you don't live. If sugar powers the cells of the body, it's your body's favorite fuels. There are alternative fuels. Your body really wants natural glucose. So if you're eating foods, though, that release sugars overly rapidly, then they build up in the blood, and it takes time for them to get into the muscle cells and into the liver cells. So David Jenkins' test, the glycemic index, measures how well these foods release sugars into the blood, and you want them to be released more slowly and gradually, not too fast. Okay, so let's say I'm eating an apple. And an apple actually releases its sugars rather slowly, despite the fact that it's sweet. And that's true for almost all fruits. They taste sweet, but they digest pretty slowly, and they release their sugars gradually. That's great. Then let's say I cooked the apple, or I blended the apple. I'm kind of digesting it in advance, and that causes the sugars to be released more and more and more rapidly. And by the way, this is true for everything. If I take some spaghetti, surprisingly enough, pasta is pretty low glycemic index. Pasta releases its sugars very gradually because it just takes time to digest. But the longer you cook it, the softer it gets, the higher the glycemic index. In other words, the more it's sort of pre-digested in your cooking pan, the quicker it will release its sugars into your blood.
And this is also, I think, a good time to note that beginning next Monday, you're doing a 3-week series based off of your latest book, Your Body in Balance. This series called Tackling Diabetes. 3 weeks just full of knowledge, one night a week on Mondays. It's going to be fantastic. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's everything you need to know about diabetes condensed into 3 weeks. And I'm really hoping that people will join. This is the second time we've offered this series. And we bring in really inspiring guests. I will tell you everything we need to know, and all the participants actually get a copy of my book, Your Body in Balance, which talks about diabetes and other hormones, and it has some of the greatest recipes ever by Lindsay S. Nixon as well. So I'm hoping people will join us. A lot of people are already signed up, and we're going to have a great class. Starts Monday, and I think it's 5 o'clock Eastern, if I'm remembering correctly.
I'll have to fact check that one, but we'll get back to you on that. But I do know for a fact you can go to pcrm.org/events to go ahead and register. And let me double down and say, yes, indeed, Lindsay's recipes are amazing. We have time for a couple of more questions. One from Zoe here. Can a plant-based diet benefit the lungs? Would it be helpful for a person who has emphysema?
A plant-based diet probably can benefit the lungs in a variety of ways. Dairy products in particular are one that often cause a little bit of inflammation, sometimes a lot of inflammation, and you see this with things like asthma, possibly even COPD of various kinds. Once the lung tissue is destroyed, which happens when a person has had emphysema for a while and you have lung tissue that is lost all its elasticity, at that point diet changes and nothing else is going to really matter too much for that destroyed tissue. What we want to do is protect the tissue that is not yet destroyed. So yeah, I would definitely get the animal products out of the diet for sure.
Question from Aria writes, my husband has arthritis. Can a plant-based diet help him?
There have been lots of studies on diet and arthritis. They all have some limitations, but this goes way, way back. A number of them are in Scandinavia, where researchers tested ovo-lacto vegetarian diets. In other words, they had dairy, or they had vegan diets without the dairy products, and a variety of other diet forms have been tested. Long story short, yes, the findings are fairly consistent that a plant-based diet can help rheumatoid arthritis. And if I were going to devise a diet that was really optimal for arthritis, what I would do is take about the next 4 weeks, avoid all animal products, do it completely vegan and low fat, and see how you do. If you still have some grinding in your joints at that point, I would even go further and eliminate temporarily plant foods that might be associated with more inflammation, things like gluten or wheat products in general. Gluten is wheat, barley, rye in particular. For some people, citrus, for others, tomatoes. And we have a specific technique for trying to tease out which foods might be triggers for you. And if you'd like to read about that in detail, you'll see the elimination diet in a book I wrote called The Cheese Trap. And I put it in the appendix because so many people, when they get away from cheese and other dairy products, find their arthritis gets better. And I might mention it's not just arthritis, it's asthma, Sjogren's disease, and other diseases that are autoimmune. You want to get away from foods that might trigger that.
All right. Next to last question, I promise you, a question from Madeline. This is really an interesting one. If losing weight is really the key here to being healthy, why do people on keto diets lose so much weight? Is that healthy?
Weight loss is a good thing to do, generally speaking, but there are so many different ways of losing weight. People can lose weight with surgery. They can lose weight by dramatically restricting calories in general. You can lose weight by doing a keto diet and so forth, but all of these choices have their own risks and their own benefits. With ketogenic diets, the theory is I won't eat any carbohydrate or sugar or very little. And since carbohydrate and sugar is the preferred fuel of your body and you're starving it for that, your body gets desperate, and so it starts to consume fat to try to keep things going. But there are a couple problems with that. If you take the carbohydrate out of your diet, you're eating fat. And if your body just is burning up the fat, using the fat that you're eating, you find yourself not losing any weight at all. And a lot of people do keto thinking, why am I not getting any results at all? For me as a doctor, I'm more concerned about two other things. If you're eating meat, other greasy foods, your cholesterol level in many cases will go up. In large studies of ketogenic dieters, bad cholesterol goes up about 10%. The other thing is those foods are linked to other problems over the long term, particularly Alzheimer's disease, certain cancers. And so when we track mortality in people on low carbohydrate diets, it's substantially higher over the long run than people who are on healthy diets. And that's why we never recommend ketogenic diets. You can lose the same kind of weight on a low-fat plant-based diet, but all the side effects are good ones. Your cholesterol comes down, your cancer risk goes down, plus your environmental footprint and all the other positives. All those are improvements too.
All right. And the final question on this Friday comes to us from Lexi on Instagram. Wants a practical tip. How can I avoid eating oil when I eat at a restaurant?
Oh, good luck to you. You probably discovered this. Virtually every restaurant in the United States and elsewhere in the world, they know vegan diets. They really can. And some of them have been doing this for a long time. An Italian place, a Chinese place, Thai, they all have foods without animal products, lots of them on the menu. However, they are in love with their bottle of oil. So they really are. So what can you do? Number one, you can negotiate. You can say, I noticed that you have X. Can you put the sauce on the side? So you're in a Chinese restaurant and you have your rice and vegetable dish. Instead of cooking it in the greasy sauce, have them bring you the sauce on the side. And that way you decide whether you're going to add it or not, and if so, how much. The other thing, here's where I give extra points to Japanese restaurants. Go to the sushi bar. Don't have the fish sushi unless you're very well insured. But you have the cucumber roll or the asparagus roll or the sweet potato roll. And they really just don't use oil very much in making sushi, Japanese salads, the seaweed salads, the regular salads, the miso soup, the edamame. It's just not their thing. So extra points for Japanese. Other places, probably going to have to negotiate.
We did a pretty good job of emptying out this mailbag today. That was quite a few questions you just got through.
Well, looking forward to doing more.
All right. Now, if we did not get to your question today, have no fear. We will save it and do our best to get you an answer on an upcoming episode. And before we go, I want to say a special hello to Bridget. She wrote in and said that she just recently discovered the exam room. She began eating a plant-based diet last Sunday, and she's loving it. Looking forward to seeing the results. How cool is that?
Wonderful. Well, Chuck, it's a testimony to the great work that you are doing. You are, Chuck. You are educating and inspiring so many people, and I thank you for bringing this program forward, and I'm delighted to be part of the team.
You humble me, but it is your knowledge that is going forth in the world, my friend. But thank you very much. We will talk to you again on Monday. Have yourself a phenomenal weekend.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
All right. And one more question. I can field this one. This one comes to us from Jason. Wants to know, how can I find a plant-based doctor here in Texas? Well, you are in luck, Jason, because if you head over to PCRM.org, you can find yourself, or barnardmedical.org. I'm so sorry, it's Friday. Barnardmedical.org. You can schedule a telehealth visit with one of our plant-based doctors or dietitians. They would love to work with you from the comfort of your own home. You can also call us 202-527-7500. Go ahead and schedule that appointment today. So many wonderful dietitians and doctors would love to work with you, Jason. And that goes for more than a quarter of the country. So everybody head over to barnardmedical.org or call that 202-527-7500 for a full list of states where services are available. Coming up on Monday's show, we will be joined by an Olympic cyclist and an actress whom you may be familiar with. She starred on Baywatch. They will be here to have a frank discussion on food addiction, and we're going to be looking at that from multiple levels. One had anorexia, one had bulimia, and then as we began speaking, I realized even though I was on the complete other end of everything with morbid obesity at 420 pounds, the way that our minds worked in so many ways was very similar. So I'm looking forward to speaking with Dotsie Bausch and Alexandra Paul here on the show on Monday. But for today, that is all the time that we have. I want to thank the crew behind the scenes that put the show together today. Thank you guys for today and all your hard work all week long. Also want to say thank you to the exam roomies who tune in and raised your nutrition IQs in a big way today. Appreciate you getting a healthy start on your weekend with us here today. And on behalf of everyone here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We will talk to you again on Monday. But until then, stay safe, take a stand, and keep it plant-based.